Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to Solution Sunday, where the soul is the solution, the soul, the part of us that is non-physical, that is wise beyond measure, the part of us that is pure light and love. This morning, we will be talking about morning and good days. Good morning, the difference between good day, good morning to start with. And today we've got my good friends, Rachel Ann and Shannon, and we are going to be discussing spells, the words that we use, cast spells, and what that actually means for us. So good day, ladies.
Good day.
Welcome.
Happy day.
So why do we say good day rather than good morning?
Well, I, for one, am not in mourning. Not today.
Exactly. Yes, when we start to realize that words, the sound of words and the spelling of words is very important to understand, and that those things can be interchangeable. And just because we are taught to spell it morning, it still sounds like morning. And there is some word trickery in there.
Yeah. You know, I think when we're unconscious about it, then it's much more potent. But for people, like us that maybe are a little more conscious of our words, we can kind of maybe transmute the energy of some of that. Like, I mean, I know me for one, like I like to swear, but I do it because I think it's something that I was told is naughty, and I'm like, hee, so I'll swear and then I'll laugh about it, and I feel like that transmutes the the negative connotation of the word because I'm making it a silly thing. So
That's funny that you bring that up, because if you even think of curse words, right?
Yeah.
Curse words, but curse words could be, ugly, hate, these really low frequency words are curse words.
Right. Well, and you bring up curse, and then that brings me to in some of the shamanic teachings, how there's the teaching that the words and the word and the frequency can actually transfer specific energies or even beings of some sort to another person out of angst and anger, and then that other person's stuck with it. So you're like shooting darts at somebody, literally with poison darts, or however you want to look at it, and then that person's infected, so to speak, with whatever it is that you're shooting at them. But and then we just have to live consciously. That's what it comes down to.
And it's all around us too. So that awareness, like you're saying, we have to be aware. If you watch TV or even driving, like there's ads constantly on the radio, on the roadside, and it's the words that just keep coming at us over and over, like casting that sort of spell and then taking control of our mind, right?
The spell.
Mm-hmm.
And what were you saying before? You were talking about grammar. What was that coming from? The word
the Latin word of grammar means book of spells, and so that's what we teach our children at school, at a regular school, is spelling, grammar, and also the name. Like, we become the name. We're no longer the woman and the man, but that is also a spell, that we become this a fictional person based on a name, and we believe we are the name.
Yeah,
exactly. And how the name is spelled, if it is in all capital letters, it means something completely different than if it's in capital letters and small letters, or all small letters. There are 3 different meanings of our names depending on which case it is spelled in.
Interesting. I didn't know that about the casings. That's
Yes, when the name is spelled in all capital letters, that's the institution that we are. That's the corporate entity, the corpse or entity that
Yeah.
the governments have created for us. They look at us as indentured servants. So they create an identity, which is the all caps name for us. So whenever you see any legal document, your name will be in all caps. But when you drop that back down, you take command as the man or woman. And then you step away from the corporate entity that they perceive you to be.
that's
Even
interesting. I'll have to look at
even the use when we talk about like legal, like this corporate identity, even the use of human, we learned like this is, and this creates division within people, because then we start identifying by the hue or color of the man
Yeah.
versus woman creator, woman man. Now it's human, and that's a whole different thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, words
Yeah.
are powerful, very powerful. I mean, they're just for manifesting purposes. Here's my most recent story on manifesting is, I was just traveling the last month. I was over in Europe, in Italy, and I'm walking down the street. And for the most part, I was alone during that time period. And I was able to be alone and really watch my thoughts and watch my words and see how it actually affected the world around me. And one day I was a little off, not being conscious with my thoughts. And I kind of was feeling a little growly. And these people were in front of me and they wouldn't move. And I was on a little cobblestone road or a little cobblestone pathway. And I'm like, I wish they'd move. I was kind of growly, and like, I want to get back. Um, and I hadn't really been that way the whole time. And I'd been really conscious. Um, and I was getting past them. Finally, they moved, and I'm like, right, it's about time, and I'm just kind of feeling almost unkind. I was just feeling growly. I don't know. It wasn't typical. And I stepped in a hole, or I stepped incorrectly with my foot, misaligned myself. I was misaligned and with my thoughts and my actions. And I twisted my ankle and I sprained my ankle. And like instantly the people were like, held me up, and I'm like, oh my God. And then me, having been so conscious with my thoughts and my words that whole time, I was like, oh my God, that's the first time that I've gone into that type of a thought process that I was aware of. And I was like, okay, all right, see what happens. And I went back and I was like, I walked away from it grateful that the people were so kind to me. And then I went back to my thought process of, keeping myself in a more honorable way of thinking. And I healed myself really quickly because I went back to that conscious thinking. But I did. I was not being aware of my thoughts and actions. And, as a result, I had a little crunch happen. So, and that's what prompted me to be invited to the call today, because I was talking to Lisa about that and how, how important it is for us to be aware of our thoughts, because they manifest our outside world, and not just our thoughts, but actually our thoughts and then our words coming out. We're powerful creators, really powerful creators. We just don't
And
realize it.
and the power, like you're saying, of those words, like I think about, I was listening to this, he's a musician, a rapper actually, and he was talking about like alcohol. It means, in the Latin breakdown of it is body eating spirit.
Yeah.
Mm.
Cool. Yep.
Yeah, body eating spirit. So it alters our consciousness, right? It takes us away from ourselves. It disconnects us from our spirit.
Yeah. Years ago, it was quite a number of years ago. It was my dear friend who's passed now. He said, sarcasm, because my kids and I were with him, and we were, shooting some sarcasm back and forth just for fun. We were giggling and stuff. But he said, yeah, sarcasm. Do you know that breaks down to? And I was like, no, not really. Breaks down to I think it's the the eating of the flesh. And I
Mm,
was like, oh, no more sarcasm.
yeah.
I really tried to eliminate sarcasm from my life. And that's really truly when I started being aware of the words I was saying and using, or the tearing of the flesh. That's what it was. The tearing of the flesh is what it broke down to. Like, just one word and just one action, ripping people apart with it. Because it
Yeah,
causes
I used to be really sarcastic as well. And until I started becoming more aware of what that energy was actually doing. And it's like, wow, that's potent energy.
Mhm. Well, if you think about it, it's such a conflicting, you're saying something really nasty in a joking manner, so it causes such conflict within,
Mhm.
and you're just throwing that conflicting energy out there.
Even with the word, if you think of the word drug, right? So this rapper was saying, my grandma always said, like, don't bring drug money, don't bring drugs into my house. That's bad. And then she would hand him on some days, like her prescription to go to Rite Aid, RITE, Rite Aid, that has a mortar and pestle as its symbol, to go pick up good drugs. So the pharmaceutical companies provide good drugs for us, and yet, and I don't mean to get political about this, but the death rate from those are extraordinary compared to street drugs. And I'm not like saying either's better, best, or worse. Well, I am actually, but it's just confusing. It's like, okay, well, what drugs do we use?
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
Yeah,
these ones are okay and these ones aren't.
yeah, and there's a huge difference between drugs and medicine.
Yeah.
You know, like
And then,
what is medicine and what are pharmaceuticals? They're not the same thing at all. But most people think that pharmaceuticals are medicine.
yeah. Well, then take it even a step further away from the words and the symbols. And the symbols that are out there. Look at the medical symbol. Like, a lot of that, if you break it all down, those were sacred symbols brought into a medical corporate setting, a medical world, and that's poisoning
Yeah. We have we've got Keith and Leanne and Branny and John and Delbert and who else is on? Leanne, so we have Keith saying all caps is the corporation set up without your parents knowing. They agreed to with their signature, when they sign over the birth certificate. It takes us off land and puts us back in the sea of the holy see of the Vatican. And now we are back in that, we're in that slave trade, because now we have been sold to the holy see, the captain of the ship. And it's a whole casting spells on the men and women who have no idea that these spells are being cast. We're being entered into these agreements without our knowledge.
And I would even say, if we look at this law and legal, it's not even an agreement, because agreement, I wrote this, it's so funny, I have this written down. It's a meeting of minds of three or more of mankind based on our word, versus a contract, which is, this negotiable instrument that may or may not involve a man. It may not. And then we have to give our signature versus our autograph, right? So, and that's a way to bind us, that signature to bind us to this contract, versus an agreement where it's creative. We're giving our,
Exactly. And they use that word. They say, put a contract out on someone.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to become really, really aware of what has been binding us into these realms of suffering and depression and lack and debt,
Yeah.
because we all have the ability to rise above this. We have the ability to be prosperous, to be healthy, to be happy. But as long as we are bound to all of these contracts and we continue to use the words that we then bind ourselves,
Well, and it's
we
written,
stay bound.
and it's written in the scriptures. I mean, they put it right out there for us. It's the word, that is creation, the word. I mean, how much more simple can it even be put? Right?
Exactly. In the beginning was the word.
Yes. Yes.
So our words speak, our words literally matter. Our words turn into the substance of our lives.
Turn into matter.
Exactly.
Matter. Yeah.
Yep. They tell all of the molecules of the universe how to arrange themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So how we speak about our own bodies, let's just look at that.
Right.
And we have simply been taught that our bodies are these meat suits that don't have any resilience, they don't have any resistance, that they need to be shot up with all kinds of things in order to, not get sick. But we live in the sickest society in the history of mankind. So apparently there's, a little disconnect there.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Keith saying, "Don't get me started on this," and he's got the link to the Inside Effects website, the movie coming out pretty soon. So if you are watching this or listening to this, The Inside Effects is going to be an incredible movie. Please go check it out, theinsideeffects.com. Get yourself signed up to be the first to know when this movie is coming out and how you can see it for free.
Because it's going to be freaking awesome.
Indeed, it is.
Awesome.
John is saying there are receptors in every cell in our body for all drugs. Why would we think God put them in there? There are natural healing vegetation that activates the same receptors. It's time we believe in God and not Satan's teachings. Keith says, and the word is law. Yep. Think on this. Each and every word we speak is a contract with the universe that creates what we speak. Exactly.
That's right. And what we speak and what we feel, when that's in alignment, that's when the magic happens. And your magic is your magic, how you want to use that magic. So those that be governing, they're speaking words that they're in alignment with, and they're using that as a manipulative source for themselves. And we, the more we learn and the more we know, then the more we can, I guess, circumvent that or transmute that and live outside of that world easily, and not have to be, slaves to their word versus our word. And so the more, like you said earlier, the more we are in our bodies and aware of our own bodies and occupying our own space, then the more we can utilize those words and those spells to create what we really want to create outside of what they've created for us.
Precisely.
I think too, as I'm listening, one of the things our family is really trying to do is to reclaim our indigenous language. And we have, on my side, it would be Comanche, Numina, and then Yoeme, Yaqui, and then my husband is Isleta Pueblo. And we don't have an alphabet, right? So when we named our kids, that's we didn't name our own children. We don't give names to our children. We have a naming ceremony, we call it, and that name comes from an elder or someone in the family who has this gift, just to be quiet and to be able to have that name come to them. But the difficulty was it was hard to put the alphabet, the letters together to make the sounds.
Yeah.
And then even like, my youngest daughter, for example, she was the only one where my husband's like, let's call her Blessing, because we wanted to have 4 children and then we have 5. And so let's call her Blessing, but there's no just one word for blessing. There's like a meaning to it. So when we presented this to an elder in the Comanche, with Comanche people, she says, oh, I prayed about it, blesses many people. That's what her name is, blesses many. She blesses many. And so I think too, that's interesting, like when we start to reconnect with these, like our first languages worldwide, like how that shifts the energy of speaking. And, like, for example, in our culture, if my children, if I had a sister, they call her mom. They don't call her auntie or auntie. They call her mom. On my husband's side, if my husband has a sister, they call her auntie. But so now you have all these mothers and you have all these, these aunties, and it's very different, like the energy of even how we address each other, like with respect, and it's not with the name, like you're saying, it's not like Auntie Lisa or Auntie Rachel. It's just like mom.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah, Shannon, we need more of your teachings out there in the world. Just the sound alone, like you were talking about the naming, and I can't tell you how many times I've come out of the woods with these sounds that I know are words, and I write them down, but I don't know how to find the meaning, what it means, and then I learned to sit with it, and then like meaning comes from those sounds, and then I start to understand what the sounds are, and then like because I write them down, years later I'll read a book and I'll be like, that's that sound, and I'll go to my journal and be like, oh my god, it is, that's what that meant, and I get all excited about it. But that's like the way to commune with our world, our natural world. And these words that we've been taught with these languages and alphabets, they're not communing with our natural world. It's taken us away from that communication. And yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I think it really has taken away.
We've been cut off from our true nature. And then we forget that we're these beautiful, amazing beings of light. And we think that we're just these limited humans that have to work for a living. And, it causes so much angst and anger and suffering in the world. And it's really up to us to start seeing through what's actually going on so that we can take our power back and we can start utilizing our words to speak what we want into existence. Keith is saying, Jackie says, speak power and life over each other, which is from a scripture. And life and death are in the power of the tongue. And Keith says, I live to prove what Rachel just said. I speak the words of creation. Indeed, the whole film project was a creation of what I spoke and thought and believed and was witnessed in the dream weaving community. And the gifts from the community literally paid for the film, a magical manifestation of what we're talking about today. Mm-hmm. And Jackie says, I was named after my Greek grandmother. Then my kindergarten teacher changed my name because it was too hard for her to pronounce. 1967.
They did that to my son. They changed his name. I named him after my grandfather. And when he went to school, because his middle name was named after my grandfather, and I did that to honor my grandfather. And when he went to school, the school started calling him by his first name because it wasn't normal to call somebody by their middle name. So he ended up with his first name, which it ended up that he was being called my other grandfather, so it didn't matter. So he was honored. either way, but yeah, they did that.
I would have to break my kids' names down phonetically. So they would, like my daughter, we call her for short Sutai. And so I'd have to say, okay, S-U-E, because they were like, what? And I'm like, Sutai, like suit and tie, Sutai. But it just would not stick. And so I'd like have to take each name and break it down into simpler pieces, but still keep the same sound for them. Like not change it to Sue, or my youngest son is Juan Shadow, not call him Juan, or that's not his name. This is his whole name. And this is, if I have to break it down in little pieces for you, this is what he's to be called,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think names more and more now, because people are becoming really creative with names. I think the school systems anyway are, in any system really, because people are getting so creative with the names, and people are taking the time to break them down more so now than like back when I was in school.
Oh,
When I was
yeah.
in school, it's Sally, John, all but I really, I see a lot of creativity with name and sound now,
Yeah.
more so than ever.
Well, it's funny too, one form of communication too, that it's so strong in my family. It's like no words. Like there's so many words in the English language, right? And so much talking, and I love to talk. But then there's like these long periods of silence within a group even, that is so powerful, and that exchange is so healing and connected, like such a deeper connection sometimes when when we go to ask for help to the person who's running a ceremony, and will bring, like, for example, a pouch of tobacco, and then you sit next to them and you just explain what it is that you're asking for, why you came to this ceremony, what your purpose is here. And they just sit and listen. They say not a thing to you, nothing. Just their eyes are closed and they're listening. Okay, and that's it.
And that, I noticed that too, when I was gone traveling for a month. And when you're alone, you get to do that. So I was alone and I was traveling new countries, new languages I don't speak, and I got to see that on a daily basis, seeing like how I don't know the language, so how sitting amongst it, just feeling that language around you, you can feel the energy of the words around you, and by the once you acclimate to that feel, you can almost understand what's happening or what somebody's saying to you, and you really can understand it. And that was pretty fascinating for me. I like to go experiment and make these little experiments with my life. But yeah, it's important to be able to expose yourself, because all of these languages are really, they're made up, and they've made a collective, like they've made a collective community, a collective consciousness of their own. And if you can tap into that collective of that particular language, just like going out in the woods, if you can tap into that collective, or you grow into a group of people that are from different sects of life, you can sit and you can oftentimes tap into that collective, whatever it is the collective is that brought them there. And I notice it's the same in the looms that we're involved in, with the dream weaving. At the end of the day, sometimes I'll go in and I'll speak something and I'll say something, but then if I go back after, I see that there was a whole theme that everybody was on. Like the whole collective group was on that same, whatever it is, that same thread, that same language. Yeah, language is important.
It is. It carries frequency. And from the experiments that Dr. Emoto did with the water, the frequency really mattered. It's about sacred geometry. When the water is pure, the sacred geometries, these beautiful snowflake configurations. And when you speak beauty into the water, peace, ease, love, joy. Those snowflake configurations turn into different beautiful patterns. But when we're speaking ill into the water, those patterns start to disintegrate, and they're no longer these lovely snowflake crystalline patterns. So because our bodies are mostly water, the frequencies matter, the words that we speak. Every single cell is reflecting the words that we speak. So when we are speaking words of, I'm not okay, I'm afraid, I don't know what to do, they told me I was stupid,
I am. So you're putting a spell on yourself.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Even if you're just thinking it, it's there. And like, going to the German New Medicine, thought patterns, behavior patterns, they make literal grooves and lesions in your brain. And then you're bringing it into the physical, making yourself physically ill.
And I think there was a time, and that's where coming back to, what we call this like uncivilized times, or being around people who are so still connected to the natural world, where there weren't those words to describe this out of control fire, or this, this man-killing rainstorm or something like that. Like, how we identify and connect with nature has changed so much. Those powers, whoever they are, just really worked on disconnecting and cutting us off as much, from ourselves, especially because if we were connected to ourselves, there wouldn't be that disconnect with nature. But it was really to separate us. And so then we lost the language, we lost the understanding, and that those deep relationships we had with the elements, with the natural world. And I use this example all the time. In the Dene language, in the Navajo language, they have 70 different ways to say air, wind. And I mean, that's just like us. Each day we show up a little bit differently, right? And so it's the same with the natural world. And so, it's this kind of fire is happening a mile away. And so then we have this idea like, okay, now we know how to tend to this fire, or relate to it, or let it talk to us. What do you need from us?
Yeah.
Beautiful. John is saying, I had a cat that would walk in front of me, so I started calling him Shithead. He started laying in the kitty litter box. I told my sister Deanna about it, and she told me about the power of words. So I started calling him Clean Kitty. After about a week, he stopped laying in the poop.
John's always got the good one.
All right.
Well, true.
Yeah, these words that we have been taught. One day I was sitting in meditation, I was really thinking about it, and I went back in my memories to when I was pre-verbal, and I remember just laying on my belly on the couch and just watching, observing everything, and there were no thoughts in my head, no words running through. I was just purely the observer. And then I followed the linear track of, then I went to school and they taught me how to spell. They taught me all of these words. Now the mind doesn't ever shut up. It's like, wow, this constant stream of blah, 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 blah. And it's like, wow, how disconnected. And then we have to, we don't have to, but if we're going to return ourselves to health and balance, we have to be able to regain control of our own minds, and to be able to stop all of those words, to stop all of that chatter, so that we can become the observer once more, and we can start observing our energy. Just like you're talking about, Rachel, when you go out into the woods, and you're by yourself and you just simply observe and you tune in to the energy of the trees and the mycelium layer and the animals, then we have, there is a language there, but it's not speaking English, French, and German. It's speaking a different language. And when we're not able to tap into the language of nature, we can't even tap into the language of our own bodies. Now, when our bodies speak to us, we go, oh my God, there's something wrong with my body. Go, fix me, fix me, fix me. Where's the next pill? Fix me. And there's nothing wrong. Our bodies are simply speaking to us, but we don't know the language.
This is why I think it's so important to, in this Western culture, aging is like, we're getting old. Let's make ourselves look like a fun house with, injecting our face and doing all these different things. And and we have our elders, and what you're talking about, Lisa, too, it's like you reminded me of, in our community here in the Bay Area, we had she passed away. Her name, we call her Big Mama. She's Miwok native from California. And she would come to these big gatherings and she would just sit quietly. And, it was like people would go up to her thinking, oh, we have to somehow include her and bring her in. But she just wanted to sit. And she was almost like this, like a warrior, or this like peacemaker, like this peaceful presence. That's what she is, this peaceful presence that kind of grounded the energy of everybody. And our elders teach us that this language of, it's okay to be quiet, it's okay to settle down. You don't have to always do it, but just be quiet. And she would just sit there, and people would try to engage her, oh, Big Mama, and hug her and shake her hand. And she was just like, and just nod to them, hey, how's your family? And then just settle down. Like, if you want to sit with me, we're not going to talk. We're just going to sit. And we've kind of lost that art of just sitting.
I always say the people that I'm closest to are the people that I can just sit in silence with and be really comfortable. And just sit.
Yeah, it's really sad that so many people are terrified of the silence in their head. If they are not thinking thoughts, they go into fear. If there's nobody speaking in a room, they get really, really uncomfortable, because we have been so disconnected from the energies.
Yeah.
That we can't tune in to hear what's actually happening. So we get very, very uncomfortable in the silence.
Yeah.
But it's the silence that we are the silence ourselves. When we get quiet enough, we recognize the soul is in the silence.
My son used to come back from college. So I'm in New York, and he went to college in Utah, and I miss him, of course. And when he'd come back, we would sit in front of each other, face to face. We wouldn't say a word. And I loved when he came back, and it makes me cry still. And we still do this. We would sit cross-legged in front of each other. And we started out like I would hold my hands like this, and he would hold his hand above mine, and we'd just sit like that. And we'd giggle and we'd laugh, but we wouldn't say anything. And I miss it. He's out in Idaho now, so I'm in that frame of missing him again, and I can't wait to sit with him again like that. But that's how we would share what's been going on in our lives, and how we, the events we've experienced, just life. And it'd be a couple months, and we'd be like, and that is, to me, that's the most richest sharing. That's true riches, true wealth, is being able to fully experience each other without the words getting in the way.
That's how babies are too, right? So you have the elders that can just be quiet, and it's not every elder, right? But then you have the babies that like Lisa's saying, they're looking, like if we look through the eyes of our children and babies, it doesn't have to be our babies, the wonder, the curiosity, reminding us, like, how do you call it, like a beginner's mind every single day, to come into this world with a beginner's mind. And at the time where they don't have the language yet, just the feeling that they put off as they like look, and the giggling, or whatever it is. We just have so many amazing teachers around us that don't use words. And they teach us, like, you have the children that remind us to play and to laugh and to be tickled, internal tickles, and just be in wonder and awe. And then the elders that are just like, okay, you can just sit too, like the hummingbird buzzes around, they told me this, but it also sits and is still. And this was a time where I was a mom and I was like, I gotta go and talk, but then I was told, like, you could be quiet too, Shannon. You could just sit on that tree branch and be still, take a breath.
Yeah, that makes me think of, we're talking about language and the languages of nature, and then like I pay attention. I believe that everything that's presented to me is speaking to me somehow. It's the divine trying to communicate with me in some way. And so animals, like the hummingbird, I believe that all animals, all tree, everything is able to communicate with me if I'm open to it enough, if I can hear it, if I can learn it, or if I can sit with it quietly to be able to find that language. And like my body, I learned that one through water. Water's, like Lisa was saying, how important water is, but I found how to communicate with my body through water, because I felt like the water, the external water that I was experiencing, was able to communicate with my internal water so clearly. Of course, there's no words that I can tell you about it. It's just that I know that the water in each of my cells can communicate with the water that's being presented externally. And, when we get on the same link and the same alignment, magic happens. But it's kind of like really not magic. It's natural. But we've moved away from it. So now it's magic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When we think about the information that is stored in our DNA, and that the blood that runs through our veins is filled with ancestry, with ancestral knowledge. And we're so disconnected that we don't receive any of the messages from our own DNA. When we can get quiet and we can start tuning in and listening to our bodies, there's tons of information available. We can start to understand why we are the way we are when we realize, oh, this is from my ancestry. My ancestors were murdered, or my ancestors were imprisoned for, debtor's prison. Or you can get the information right from your own blood if you wish. And then you can start to clear that ancestry, but you have to be quiet enough and aware enough to start tuning in and listening, and to stop just listening to all the spells that are being cast out there. The TV, the media, spells are being cast all day, every day. And it's with words and it's with energy. And the energy that is output for mass consumption is very highly disturbing. It's filled with fear, it's filled with doubt, it's filled with guilt, it's filled with all kinds of distortions. And these are all spells that are being cast. And people seem to really just gobble them up. Oh, I'm going to see the latest horror flick, or oh, it's 6 o'clock, I got to turn the news on. Really? You
Even
actually,
with the music too, right, Lisa? The
yes.
music, these chants that we're hearing, they're not like chants from our ancestors or chants that we learn to appreciate and connect with the natural world. You know, you make me think too, when we do connect with what you're saying, when we connect with ourselves, with that you know, the memory that lives within us, we don't have to say anything. We teach our children through just how we are, right, in the world. And when I was a yoga teacher, I'd have students come up and say, I want my kids to learn how to meditate. What do I do? Can you do a class? And their kids are like 5, 6 years old. I'm like, just meditate and let them watch you do it at home. That's how you teach them. And it's so funny because the other day, my daughter, she's 26, Choki. We have a plum tree, and I kid you not, this plum tree, I say this all the time, is like a four-legged. It's like a pet. It's so loving and friendly and wants attention. And so whenever it pokes at me for attention, I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't stop. And I'll like touch it and squeeze it and shake it and talk to it. And the other day, Choki was walking by and she had like this big, you know, big messy bun on top of her head. And the branch went like speared her in the side of the head. And she laughed and she's like, I'm sorry. Hello, how are you? And I'm like, this is like the best moment ever. And like, she didn't know I was watching her from, you know, like a distance. And so here she is talking to this plum tree. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, I can relate with that, Shannon. Recently, my son said to me, and I thought he had disconnected from my kids. They're aware, and I thought my youngest had disconnected from all of that. And recently, he told me, he's like, you know, he's super science oriented, and he like loves to study, but he loves to study plants and like the names of the plants and how they grow and what environment, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, you know, most people are. He said this back to me. He goes, most people are all science oriented, and when they go to study a plant, they want to know the science behind it. When I see a plant, I see like its hair and its stance and its personality, and I'm like, yes, yes, okay, that's the language that you're tapping into. Awesome, that's gonna spread, and you're gonna be able to pick up on all the other languages now. Yay.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. Jackie says, everyone wants to know their DNA, ancestry.com, but communing with your ancestry is different. Yes, we don't really need these other institutions to do these things for us.
And I'm not sharing my DNA.
Right? Like, you know, we have to really see
Yep.
this is also spelling, because they say, oh, here, we'll tell you all about your ancestry, but what else are they going to be doing with that DNA? And, you know, how do we know? Like, how do we know what they're actually doing and what reports we're actually getting? But when you can tune in and you can communicate with your own DNA, you can get all the reports you need. Like anything you need to know is available right inside. And Keith is saying, they call it the news. I call it the olds. Nothing new is happening. It's repackaged fear and more fear. And then the commercials that follow sell the drugs to so-called help us deal with the fear that they just created.
Yeah, what is up with that? I hadn't watched regular TV or cable TV or whatever in probably years. And when I was over in Italy recently, I turned on the TV just because I was curious about, you know, TV. And I was in the airport, and it was all COVID. It was all prescription, and besides that, it was news. And I was like, what? I hear it. I hear people talk about it, but I didn't realize how bad it was. Yeah, the show's over. Here's the commercial on prescriptions that have 5 billion different side effects that could kill you, but you take the prescription to stay alive. That didn't make any sense to me at all.
right? Yeah, this will prevent you from dying. No, actually, it does not.
Yeah.
It's very sad. John
Yeah.
says almost all music is sold in 440 hertz, and that is very harmful to humans
Yeah.
because it used to be 432 hertz, which is God's vibration.
Yeah, the vibration. That's, I also found in my travels recently that when I was in very populated areas, like metropolis type settings, in the cities, that I would feel after a while out in public, I'd feel like weight on me, and I'd have to leave, and I don't know, my go-to is lots of water, and when I start feeling like that, lots of water, lemon water, and I'll take dandelion root, and it seems to lighten me. I feel lighter after I do that. So I feel like it's I'm not accustomed to the frequency that's around me. So I just kind of, the only thing that I can really say about it that I don't know is that I'm exposed to frequencies that my body's not able to adjust to, and it just kind of weighs on me, or sticks to me somehow, and I have to clear it away in
Mhm.
various ways,
Yeah.
breathing, breath work,
Yep.
'cause it's sticky, it's cookie, but I do feel like that there's ways of, when you become conscious of it, I feel like there's ways of being able to walk amongst it without it bothering you, but you have to remain conscious of it.
Exactly.
And getting to that point might not be easy.
Yeah, and there are some very simple techniques to develop that allow you to walk through the world without getting it all over you.
Yeah.
And when we start to understand that everything is energy, then we start to notice the energy when it is sticking to us. The energy, all the negative energies, the doubt, the fear, the guilt, the shame, none of that belongs to us. And when we understand, when we are able to tap into our own frequencies and we recognize our own frequency that is naturally happy, joyful, positive, upbeat, confident, curious, when we recognize that frequency, it's really easy to notice the frequencies that don't belong to us. And it's much easier to get rid of them because it's like, oh, phew, that doesn't belong to me.
No, thank you.
Exactly. So Keith says, this drug will prevent you from dying. Oh, and by the way, a side effect is may cause death.
Yeah.
He says, they don't even hide it, Jackie. It's literally called a TB program. Exactly.
Television too, right? Television.
There, yes, television. Exactly. And that's what the news is. It says, here's the news. This is what we want you to know. And this is what we want you to believe. And this is what we want you to feel about it. And it's like we really don't need to even go there. Life is so much. The day I chose to get rid of the TV was like the greatest day ever. And I thought that I would have big time withdrawals from TV because I was one of those that, was into the programming. It's like, oh, I don't want to be by myself. I don't want the quiet. I need to be entertained. And then once I realized that, oh, wait a minute, there's power here in the quiet. I can actually utilize the silence and tap into source and get far better, more entertaining information in the quiet than I can from the news. It's a great discovery.
You know what's so funny about programs too on television is, and I don't understand. Well, I do understand. It's like the spell is put out there right there, and they tend to have these shows where not all of them, but someone's dying of cancer, right? It's over and over and over. It seems like you can't get away from it. Like they always want to put that in, but then they tell you this character has cancer. They go to the pharmaceutical, the route, and they still die. And it's like, wouldn't you want to sell your drug a different way? That you're not going to die. It's like, hey, take this drug and you're going to be like, woo, you know, you're, but it's like, no, they put it right out there. Like, you know, they create the disease. This is the disease. This is it. This is it. This is it. And then they tell you,
They want you to get caught up in the karmic loop.
Exactly. That's the spell. The disease is the spell.
right.
It's the spell that they cast, making us believe that our bodies are being attacked by these diseases, when in fact, our bodies are simply speaking to us. And when we start to understand the language of the body, we can understand the message, and then we can address what's actually at the root of the problem, which is never the body. When left to our own devices, if we got out of the way, our bodies would simply rejuvenate themselves and heal themselves automatically. But it's all the negative programming. Oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. I got to battle this. I got to do this. I got to take the pharmaceuticals. I got to do what the doctor tells me to do. You know, it's all of that that is creating the dis-ease in the first place.
And then like, getting caught up in a karmic loop, coming back again, reincarnating into that loop again and again and again.
Exactly.
So if you're not feeding your spirit for evolution, you're just coming back and doing it again.
Right.
Again and again and again.
What we believe is what we experience. So when we really step all the way back and we start to look at it, we are non-physical beings. We are not these bodies. We are infinite, eternal. We are literally life itself. And these bodies are literally inanimate objects. We are the life animating the body. So we are literally telling the body what to do. And how we form our energy, what we form ourselves into, I'm not okay, this isn't good, I'm under attack, I'm a victim, whatever it is that we tell, that's the story that our body tells. And when we start to tell a better story, when we start to realize, wait a second, death is the ultimate illusion. It's the ultimate spell that is cast, because it is the ultimate spell that is the biggest fear for everybody, is death. So then what happens? Well, we die, and then we believe that, oh no, I just died. And because we just died, we still believe in death. Now we got to come back again until we can realize that I am life itself. I can't die. And once we understand that, then we can actually stop this pattern. We can start living really long lives, and we can animate these bodies for as long as we want, because our bodies are constantly regenerating and rejuvenating themselves. But as long as we believe in death, we're going to keep dying because we have to face the illusions. We have to break through these illusions.
Yeah, that made me think of something else too, where there's a lot of people that feel that they're doing really beautiful work and helping other people, but many people who are viewed in that category, not all, of course, but many are, they're casting spells so that they can have a following. And the reason that they want a following, and this is like same as the government, the reason they want a following is because they're utilizing that energy. They're being fed from other people, which is what literally our government is doing, our powers that be. So it's as above, so below. It's happening everywhere in all kinds of different areas. And that's why it's even, another reason why it's so important to take your own power, your own thoughts, your own energy, and be a sovereign being. That's where your power is. You know, to be able to create. Yes, when you get more than one, where more than one gather. I'm not good with the Bible, but I kind of turned my back on that. But like
Yeah, where two or more are
rebellion.
gathered.
Yeah, we're two or more gathered. That's it. Yeah. And you know, that's when the power begins. But when two or more gather, that's where it can be manipulated too. So like start feeding off of each other. So I don't want to feed off of each other. I want to uplift. I want people to be their own sovereign, unique individual that they are. I want to help build on that. That's the world I want to see.
Exactly. And that's why we all dream weave together.
Right.
Because we are here to build each other up, to
Mhm.
speak our spells of greatness into the world, the empowering spells, the spells of you can do this. I see this dream coming true for you. And so it is. And when we gather together and we see these dreams coming true for each other, we help manifest them far more quickly.
Yes. Yeah.
Extremely empowering. So, ladies, thank you so much for this incredible conversation this morning. And thank you all for joining us this morning. We've had some really great conversations. And Jackie says, my grandmother had advanced colon cancer in her 40s. The doctor told her, you're going to die. She said, no, I'm not. I'm going to outlive you. She passed at 94.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. All
Awesome.
kinds of stories. Like, we are the creators of our own reality. And nobody can tell us that we're going to die. If we believe them, then so it is. But when we know inside that we're eternal beings, there's no such thing as death, then we can start actually living rather than just simply trying to avoid dying.
Use your words and your thoughts to do it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Speak the words you wish to create. Yeah. Time for us all to create heaven on earth. This is what we have the power to do. So, ladies, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
It's always such an honor to have these conversations with such wise beings.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, until next week, I'm Lisa Warner. I'm the author of The Simplicity of Self-Healing. You can find more at connectingyoutoyou.com. And you can find Shannon at Shannon's Natural Kitchen.com. You want some amazing recipes and words of wisdom from Shannon, check out
Thank
her
you.
website as well. And Rachel is always here in our beautiful community, dream weaving. If anybody wants to come and dream weave with us, please feel free to reach out and we'll be more than happy to invite you to learn more about it with us. So thank you all so much. Until next week, create for yourselves a great week. Cast some great spells for yourselves.